Well, when it comes to trauma, we have talked about how to identify it, heal from it, and move on. But for some people who have experienced really traumatic events that others did not, they may struggle with feelings of intense remorse or shame. Mental health experts describe these feelings as survivor's guilt, and they say common triggers include natural disasters, mass shootings, and car accidents. Licensed psychotherapist Gina Maffa joins me now. She's a trauma therapist who specializes in grief. Thank you so much for being here, Gina.
Thank you for having me back.
So let's talk about how common survivor's guilt can be and there are sort of specific behaviors that may be associated with it. What are those?
Absolutely. It can be very common on a large-scale event especially. Those behaviors will look like avoiding the event completely, or ruminating, kind of getting into that why not me, what if scenario. It can be isolating yourself from other people. It can be difficulty enjoying life as it used to be. And of course, even harder is numbing or engaging in any kind of self-punishing behaviors after the fact.
If that happens to you, what can you do about it? And what are the dangers if you can't seem to move past this survivor's guilt?
I think it's really important to combat it as fast as possible after the event. A lot of people are confused by the ways in which it manifests, so it can be hard. The long-term effects of it can be really, really debilitating, and they can be something like persistent shame. It can be developing anxiety, depression, or even PTSD itself. It can be distancing ourselves from close relationships because we feel shame or guilt, and it can be a lot of chronic stress to our bodies. So if you see it manifesting in your body, please pay close attention.
Yeah, it can be so damaging, right?
Absolutely.
So is there something specific about this type of feeling, survivor's guilt, that makes it difficult to overcome? And what are your tips for taking steps towards getting past that emotion?
Sure. Well, you know, it's confusing because people don't often talk about their fortune. We're always so used to talking about hard things that happen, not when we feel lucky about something and guilt over that. So it's a really unique feeling. And so I think it's very confusing for people to experience it. I think when you're looking to sort of combat some of those symptoms, it's important to know that just because you survived something doesn't mean it wasn't traumatizing and doesn't have a traumatizing effect on you. So looking at those trauma symptoms is going to be the way forward.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you're saying it's okay to acknowledge that you also experienced trauma. Even if you got out of it, you survived, but don't sit in that feeling for too long. So I guess, you know, when do you know you need to talk to someone professionally?
When something is persisting, when you start to have isolation, when those ruminations of why not me start to become very overwhelming, and these things can be influenced by something called hindsight bias, where we think that we can actually go back in time and predict a different outcome or have done something differently. When those ruminations continue, or when we start to have more persistent anxiety, shame, guilt, depression, these are the times to really look for somebody who's trauma-informed as a professional.
Got it. Don't feel like you have to get through this by yourself. If you are seeing someone in your family or a loved one, a friend, who's experiencing this and seems to be stuck, what can you do to support them?
I would say simply this: show up. Try not to judge them and try not to bright side and say everything is going to be okay. Whatever we can do to support and validate their feelings is going to be important. If you see them struggling even harder, it's okay to say, hey, I see you struggling. Maybe it's time to talk to somebody who can help you with this overwhelm. And obviously,
No, go ahead. A trauma-informed specialist, right?
yes, of course. And obviously, if we are going to be wanting to create meaning and purpose, it's going to be important to support somebody in that. How do you want to create those tributes?
Gina Maffa, thank you so much. We learned a lot. You're watching NBC News Daily.